Okay, let's unpack this. We've all heard the phrase government shutdown, right? Often with a groan. But what does it really mean? Beyond the alarming headlines, it feels like more than just a casual pause.
It absolutely is. Think of the federal government as this vast, incredibly complex machine.
Yeah.
Running everything from national parks, tax refunds, border protection, even vital medical research.
Okay.
A shutdown is what happens when its fuel source, its funding, suddenly runs dry.
The lifeline gets cut.
Yeah.
So today, we're doing a deep dive into exactly that.
Right.
We've gathered a whole stack of sources. We're talking legal documents from Justice and OMB, detailed reports from the Congressional Research Service, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget.
It's stuff there.
And even recent news outlets like the Times Republican, Politico. You get the idea.
A broad look.
Our mission, to pull out the crucial insights, cut through the noise, and help you understand the nuts and bolts, how and why these shutdowns happen.
And the impact. Crucially, the impact.
Yes, what it actually means for you. We're looking for those surprising facts, those aha moments.
And what's fascinating, I think, is how deeply rooted the rules are for these funding lapses.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just random political chaos, though it can feel like it. Our sources show it's a very specific legal and procedural event.
Going way back.
All the way back to the U.S. Constitution. It's what happens when political agreement fails and the legal frameworks sort of takes over, halts things in a prescribed way.
Okay, so if it's not just a pause, let's get specific. What is a federal government shutdown, technically?
So at its core, it happens when federal agencies and programs lose their funding.
Because the money runs out.
Essentially, yes. Their appropriations, the spending authorizations Congress grants, expire, either the full-year ones or temporary ones. And then agencies are forced by law to stop all non-essential discretionary functions.
Non-essential discretionary. Okay, what does that cover?
Think of the government's day-to-day operations that aren't, immediately critical for human safety or protecting property, or things not funded by older multi-year appropriations.
So the trigger is Congress failing to pass the budget.
Right. Failing to pass those 12 annual appropriations bills, or maybe a temporary patch called a continuing resolution, or CR.
By the deadline, October 1st.
Usually October 1st, the start of the fiscal year. For example, sources noted for FY 2025, funding was set to expire March 14th, 2025, with no full-year bills done. That sets the stage.
Got it. Now, connecting this to the bigger picture, it's really important we distinguish this from a debt default.
Absolutely crucial. They sound equally bad, maybe, but they're very different.
How so?
A shutdown, like we said, is about a lack of funding appropriations. Discretionary spending taps turn off. Non-essential functions halt. Payments might be delayed, but usually get made later.
Okay.
A debt default, that's potentially catastrophic. That's when the government hits its borrowing limit, the debt ceiling.
And literally can't pay its bills.
Exactly. Can't pay creditors, can't pay any obligations. Interest on the debt, mandatory spending, everything. The sources call a shutdown disruptive. They call default potentially disastrous. Big difference.
Okay, so it's not just political games. There's a real legal reason the government has to shut down. They can't just, keep a skeleton crew running.
Not really, no. It goes right back to the Constitution. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7.
Which says?
Basically, no money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. Simple, but powerful.
No congressional approval, no spending.
Precisely. Congress holds the purse strings. And to enforce that, you have the Antideficiency Act.
The safety switch you mentioned.
Yeah, think of it like that, a strict one. It generally stops federal employees from spending money or even promising to spend money incurring obligations without an appropriation already in place.
Even accepting volunteers.
Even accepting voluntary services in most cases. And there are potential criminal sanctions, fines.
Wow.
So it's pretty black and white for most things.
So if the rules are that strict about stopping, what does keep going? What are the exceptions?
That's the key nuance. Legal interpretations, like the Civiletti opinions from the early 80s, really tighten things up. Agencies must suspend operations with only very limited exceptions.
Like what?
Well, the main one is emergencies involving the safety of human life or the protection of property.
Sounds broad.
It used to be interpreted more broadly, but a 1990 update clarified it doesn't include ongoing regular functions just because stopping them might eventually be bad.
It has to be immediate danger.
The threat needs to be near at hand and demanding of immediate response. Think actual emergencies, not just running the government day to day.
Okay. Any other exceptions?
Yes, activities authorized by law can continue. This includes things funded by money already set aside for multiple years.
Multi-year funds.
Right. Or things explicitly allowed by law, like certain contracts. And, importantly, activities necessarily implied by law.
Like Social Security checks.
That's the classic example. Paying those benefits is seen as a necessary implication of the law establishing Social Security, even if the administrative staff processing them might face issues if their salaries aren't funded.
I see.
And finally, minimal activities for the orderly closing of agencies. But even with these exceptions, remember, they can only promise to pay the actual money, the outlays, wait until funding is back.
You might work, but you don't get paid immediately.
Exactly, until Congress acts.
So, given these rules, how does Congress try to avoid this mess? What are their options?
Two main paths. The ideal one, pass all 12 annual appropriations bills on time by October 1st.
The detailed budgets for everything.
Right. When that doesn't happen, which is often, they turn to continuing resolutions, CRs.
The temporary patch.
Yeah, it temporarily funds the government, usually at last year's levels, buying more time. They can be clean, just funding, or have anomalies or policy riders attached.
Policy changes snuck in.
Or attempts at them, yeah. Often a point of contention.
But relying on these CRs sounds like kicking the can down the road. Our sources mentioned inefficiencies.
Big time. CRs often just keep funding outdated programs because they roll over old levels. Agencies can't plan properly. Starting new projects, difficult.
Lots of wasted effort.
A lot of wasted staff time on short-term plans and revisions. It's like putting a bandage on a chronic issue instead of addressing it. Doesn't let agencies run effectively.
Okay, we've got the legal how, but let's dig into the why. What's really driving these impasses? Why can't they just agree?
The politics. That's where our sources point. Fundamentally, it's a failure of agreement between the president and Congress on funding.
Rooted in deeper disagreements.
Often, yes. Deep political divides, sometimes even factions within party. The sources specifically highlight hardline Republicans, particularly members of the House Freedom Caucus.
As key players.
As often central players, yes. Described sometimes as embracing the idea of a shutdown to gain leverage.
Leverage for what?
For achieving steep spending cuts. That's the stated goal. Their core motivation, articulated by people like Rep. Ralph Norman or an analysis from outlets like the Times Republican, is serious concern over the disastrous fiscal state of affairs.
The debt and deficit issue.
Exactly. They point to federal spending nearing a quarter of GDP, multi-trillion-dollar deficits, debt equaling GDP. They argue the problem is too big for small fixes.
So even things like rescissions, canceling old funds aren't enough.
Viewed as gimmicks by some in this group, yeah. Not real structural cuts. This strong conservative push for fiscal change makes passing spending bills, even temporary CRs, very hard unless they include major policy changes.
Like border security demands we've heard about.
That's a key example cited in the sources, yes. Overhauling border and immigration laws as a condition for funding.
And this creates tension even within the Republican Party.
Definitely. Sources quote senior Republicans like Rep. Steve Womack acknowledging the contentiousness and fractures, making shutdowns more likely. You see the split.
How so?
Well, you have some like Rep. Bob Good quoted as believing most Americans won't even miss a short shutdown.
Really?
While others argue shutdowns are never good policy or politics if we get blamed for it. That internal party tension plus the wider partisan gridlock fuels the cycle.
Which leads to maybe the biggest irony here. You mentioned these shutdowns are often pushed to cut spending, but the sources consistently show they actually cost money. A lot of money.
It's a profound point and absolutely true according to the data. The CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, estimated the 2018-2019 shutdown reduced GDP by $11 billion.
$11 billion.
And $3 billion of that was just lost. Never recovered economic activity.
Right.
And think about this. The 2013 shutdown alone cost $2.5 billion just in back pay and benefits for furloughed workers, paying people for not working.
Yeah, that's incredible.
A 2019 Senate report tallied up the waste from the 3 shutdowns between 2013 and 2019. Nearly $4 billion of taxpayer money just gone.
Plus other costs.
Oh, yeah. Agencies spend money on contingency plans. They lose user fees. National parks lost about $7 million in fees in 2013. Contractors face uncertainty, might raise prices.
Then the wider economy.
Negative impacts, less private investment, delayed hiring, lower consumer confidence. It creates drag.
So it's not abstract. What actually stops? What services do people lose access to?
all those non-essential discretionary functions, and that hits hard. Think about visiting a national park. 400 parks closed in 2013, turning away millions. Tourism revenue lost.
Public health stuff.
Definitely. EPA halted hazardous waste and drinking water inspections. FDA food safety inspections got delayed.
What about things like taxes or loans?
The IRS gets backlogged. Income verification slows down, delaying mortgages, loans, billions in tax refunds, getting visas or passports severely delayed. Impacts travel, business.
Even medical research.
Yep. The National Institutes of Health, NIH, has had to stop admitting new patients to clinical trials, stop processing grant applications.
Okay, but what about those big mandatory programs? Social Security, Medicare? People rely on those checks.
That's a really important question. Generally, the benefit checks themselves keep going out because they're mandatory spending. But the services around them, the ones funded by discretionary money, can take a hit. Things like verifying benefits, issuing new cards, processing new applications.
So the support system gets shaky.
Exactly. Sources mention that during the 95-96 shutdown, over 10,000 Medicare applicants were turned away daily. The core payment might be safe, but access and admin suffer.
And this disproportionately hurts certain groups.
The sources are quite clear on that. Shutdowns disproportionately affect the most vulnerable. Think about SNAP food assistance, TANF welfare benefits, WIC nutrition support for mothers and children.
All potentially at risk.
Jeopardized, yes. Kids in Head Start, families needing housing assistance, facing real hardship. It ties back to that conservative argument we discussed earlier, too.
How so?
Well, figures like Star Parker argue that massive government spending and the resulting slower economic growth ultimately shrink opportunity, especially for those starting with little. So from that perspective, the fiscal issues and shutdown impacts are linked.
What about the actual government employees and contractors?
Huge impact there. Hundreds of thousands of federal workers get put on shutdown furlough.
Yeah.
Temporary, no work, no pay status.
Like 850,000 in 2013.
That's the number cited, yeah. Now, there's a law guaranteeing them back pay eventually, since 2019.
But not contractors.
Historically, no. Federal contractors usually don't get back pay. That's devastating for many small businesses and their employees.
And the accepted employees, the essential ones.
They have to work public safety, national security folks. But historically, they also didn't get paid until the shutdown ended. Imagine working without knowing when your next paycheck arrives.
Terrible for morale, I bet. Retention, too.
Absolutely. And beyond the domestic side, shutdowns create this perception of vulnerability for the U.S. globally.
Adversaries might see weakness.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Even if core security functions continue, any delay or sign of instability increases risk.
Okay, let's bring it to today. The sources mentioned that as of July 2025, we were facing another potential shutdown. No FY25 bills passed by the spring deadline.
That's right. None of the 12 full-year bills were done by March 14th, 2025, setting up another potential fall showdown.
And CU Republicans were worried.
Rep. Steve Womack, a key appropriator, was quoted in July 25 saying the odds of an October shutdown were pretty high.
Why? Same reasons.
He pointed directly to the ongoing contentiousness in Congress and fractures within the Republican Party. The same dynamics persisting.
So this cycle just continues. The impasses, the CRs.
And that cycle itself is damaging. It disrupts agencies, makes planning impossible, wastes taxpayer money on outdated programs, as we've discussed.
It points to a deeper problem.
It really does. A challenge in balancing that drive for fiscal responsibility, which many see as vital, with the need for government continuity and supporting the population.
So, wrapping this up, what's the key takeaway? We've seen shutdowns stem from the Constitution, get filtered through legal acts and opinions, and are often triggered by deep political fights over spending. We heard the conservative arguments about debt and the need for cuts.
Right, a major driver according to the sources.
But then we saw the real costs. Economic damage, service disruptions, impacts on vulnerable people, wasted money. It's this constant tension.
A tension between wanting to control spending and the disruptive, often costly reality of using shutdowns as the tool.
So if we zoom out, what's the final thought for our listeners?
Well, if we connect this all to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
it really makes you wonder. In today's complex world with so many challenges, how can the nation effectively debate its finances and control spending without constantly slamming on the emergency brake, without repeatedly triggering these events that seem to generate more costs and risks than savings? It suggests maybe the mechanisms themselves need a rethink, not just the political will.
A fundamental question about how we govern ourselves fiscally. Food for thought.
Definitely.
That's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us to get truly well-informed on this really critical issue.